Asterian Accord Station looked like a halo someone had forgotten to take off a dead god. From the shuttle window, General Amara Kale watched the ring world turn slowly against the starless backdrop, its inner bands lit in disciplined strips, white corridors, blue docking spines, amber traffic lanes. Nothing about it said welcome. Everything about it said control. The shuttle latched with a heavy clang that carried through the cabin like a judgment. "Docking complete," the pilot announced, voice too cheerful for the moment. Kale rose first. Not because rank demanded it, but because leadership did. She adjusted the collar of her dark uniform and felt the small weight of the UTDC insignia above her heart. The metal was warm from her body, as if it had been holding its own breath. Behind her, Ambassador Elias Rook stood slower, smoothing a crease that didn't exist. His eyes darted to the security canopy outside the airlock, drones in perfect spacing, council personnel in polished armor, their visors reflecting nothing human back at them. Dr. Syra Nadim hugged a sealed case to her chest. It wasn't large, but she held it like it contained an organ. Her fingers were pale at the edges. Captain Juno Mirek leaned toward Kale, voice low. "More escorts than the last visit." Kale followed his glance. The courtesy detail had doubled, and the gallery walkway above the docking bay was lined with watchers who weren't pretending to be anything else. Their posture screamed containment. "They're not escorts," Kale murmured. "They're witnesses." Rook swallowed. "Or executioners." Kale didn't correct him. She didn't need to. Her mind ran through probabilities the way other people breathed. Who had motive, who had leverage, what a frightened bureaucracy did when cornered. The council had not called them here for reconciliation. They had called them here to be seen losing. The airlock opened with a sigh, releasing a sterile scent, faintly metallic. The lead peacekeeper stepped forward. Tall, segmented armor, crest marked with the council's spiral sigil. His translator halo hovered at his throat, shimmering. "Terran delegation," the peacekeeper said. "You will follow the marked path to Assembly Chamber 7. You will refrain from unscheduled communication. You will submit all devices for neutral scanning." Rook started to speak, diplomatic instinct flaring. Kale lifted one hand. "Neutral scanning performed by who's neutral?" The peacekeeper's visor tilted. "The council's." "So," Kale said evenly. "Not neutral." A pause. The halo flickered as if searching for a softer synonym. "Standard." Kale stepped forward, offering her wrist for the scan. The device flashed green, then lingered too long, as if disappointed it had found nothing interesting. As they walked, the corridor swallowed sound. Even footsteps seemed absorbed by the station's polished floor. Every few meters, a mural of the council's founding moment, repeated, joined hands of alien species beneath the same spiral emblem, the promise of order etched beneath in a dozen scripts. Order, Kale thought, was the word tyrants used when they ran out of justification. Nadim stayed close. "General," she whispered, barely moving her lips, "the archive key is intact. If they seize it—" "They won't," Kale said. "And if they try, they'll do it on record." "Record?" Rook echoed. "They control the feeds." Kale's mouth tightened, not in a smile, but in a line that meant she had already accounted for that assumption. "They control their feeds." Juno's gaze stayed on the ceiling corners, where micro-cameras hid behind decorative grilles. "They're crowding the hallways. Like they expect trouble." "They expect us to plead," Kale replied. "Or explode." Rook's voice dropped. "And if we do neither? Then we become a problem they can't categorize." Assembly Chamber 7 opened like the mouth of a machine designed to digest dissent. The chamber was amphitheater-wide, seats floating in layered arcs. Species clustered by alliance and fear. Translation halos hovered above every head like faint crowns. The air itself carried a soft hum of simultaneous languages braided into one. Humans were placed near the floor. Not even in the center, off to the side, where lesser delegations stood, where the lighting was a fraction dimmer. A gesture so small it could be denied, and so precise it could not be accidental. A herald drifted forward robed, face hidden behind a mirrored veil. Their voice arrived in Kale's ear as clear Terran standard. Terran delegation. You are granted attendance by Council grace. As a non-signatory developing civilization, you are allotted 5 minutes of address. You will not interrupt Council proceedings. 5 minutes, Kale thought. Enough time for a surrender. Not enough time for a truth. Rook's shoulders slumped for a heartbeat. Nadim's grip tightened on the case. Juno's jaw clenched. Kale leaned slightly toward them. Stay steady. No reactions. Let them perform. What's the plan? Rook whispered. Kale's eyes stayed on the far dais. Make them commit to their story in front of everyone. A door opened high above. The chamber shifted as if a current had changed direction. High Executor Varric Thule entered without hurry, escorted by an honor line of peacekeepers. He looked older than his file suggested, age not in frailty, but in the certainty of someone who had never been contradicted where it mattered. His skin carried the matte texture of stone, eyes black as an unlit screen. When he reached the dais, he didn't look at the chamber. He looked at Kale, and only Kale, like a judge selecting a sentence. Terrans, Thule began, and the words sounded like a classification, not a people. You are here to receive clarification regarding Council action in the Eidolon system. Clarification, Kale noted. Not apology. Not inquiry. Not even explanation. Thule's hand rose. A hologram formed, a calm map of the Eidolon colonies, neat labels, gentle colors. It looked like a brochure. The Council enacted a compliance operation based on credible intelligence, indicating prohibited weapons development. Peacekeeping forces acted to prevent destabilization. Any losses incurred are regrettable. Regrettable. As if grief could be filed. Kale felt something move behind her ribs, an old pressure, the memory of Earth's emergency broadcasts, the screaming silence when power grids failed, the way hospitals turned into darkened tombs. She didn't let it reach her face. Thule continued. Terran expansion has been rapid. Your history indicates volatility. We offered guidance. You chose defiance. Rook shifted, about to respond with careful phrasing. Kale stepped forward instead. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't posture. She simply spoke as if the chamber belonged to reality, not to ritual. High Executor, she said. Your forces entered Eidolon under what transponder registry? Thule blinked once, slow. Registry details are Council security restricted. So you cannot confirm, Kale replied, that the ships you sent were operating under lawful identification. Murmurs rippled, subtle but real. Thule's gaze hardened. You are allotted 5 minutes, General. Do not waste them on procedural games. Kale's eyes swept the chamber, faces, halos, stillness. Procedure is how you hide violence, she said softly. It's also how you expose it. Thule's mouth curved, almost amused. A minor civilization cannot accuse the Council. Kale nodded as if accepting a trivial weather report. Then I'm not accusing, she said. I'm asking questions. The Herald's voice cut in. Terran address time has. The Herald's tone sharpened as if time itself had become a weapon. Terran address time, 5 minutes. A translucent clock unfurled above Kale's head, digits in Council script, converted by her halo into Terran standard. It began to count down. Thule watched it with the satisfaction of a man watching a net tighten. Kale didn't look up. She looked around. Not at the highest seats where power lounged, but at the lower tiers, minor delegations, trade blocks, protectorates with collars disguised as ribbons. She met eyes that flicked away. Fear traveled fast in this room, and the Council had been feeding it for centuries. General Amara Kale, Thule said, voice amplified. The Council will now clarify Terran status. Under Contact Law 17, you are designated a developing civilization. Under Stability Protocol 9, a developing civilization cannot maintain independent strategic armaments beyond system defense. Eidolon violated this by existing? Kale cut in, mild as rain. A ripple passed through the chamber. Interruption. A small crack in the ritual. Thule's eyes narrowed. By expanding without oversight. By constructing shipyards outside approved lanes. By refusing inspection. Kale nodded once. Let's be precise, she said. You propose protective oversight. Define it. Thule lifted a hand and the chamber's central hollows shifted. Lines formed, human systems encircled by council markers, monitoring stations, inspection routes, restricted zones. A map that looked like assistance until you counted the locks. Council monitors embedded within Terran command structures, Thule said. Mandatory compliance audits. Restriction of deep-range fleets. Temporary seizure of unauthorized technology. In exchange, the Council guarantees stability. Rook's breath hitched. He leaned toward Kale, whispering fast. That's occupation wearing silk. Amara. Kale didn't turn. How long is temporary? She asked aloud. Thule's halo glimmered as it translated a smile. Until you demonstrate maturity. And who decides maturity? The Council, Thule replied, as if the universe had only one answer. Kale let a beat of silence hang. She wanted the room to feel the shape of that sentence. And if we refuse? She asked. Thule's voice stayed smooth. Sanctions. Restricted trade corridors. Denial of medical exchange. And if necessary, additional compliance operations to prevent destabilization. Additional. As if Eidolon was a routine maintenance task. Kale's fingers curled once, then relaxed. She forced the image of Earth's darkened hospitals back behind her teeth. Pain could not steer this moment. Only clarity could. So, she said, you will starve us into obedience. You will be guided, Thule corrected. Kale's gaze moved again through the chamber, searching for a face that looked uncertain enough to be reachable. She found one, an amphibious envoy whose translator halo stuttered as if it disliked what it was hearing. High Executor, Kale said. You call this stability. I call it leverage. Thule's posture sharpened. Your language is inflammatory. My reality is inconvenient, Kale replied. Now, second question. You claimed credible intelligence. Who authored it? That information is classified. Of course, Kale said, and her calmness made the phrase sharper than accusation. Third question. Why did your peacekeeping fleet enter Eidolon with transponder details you refused to state? If the operation was lawful, transparency costs nothing. Thule's gaze flicked to the Herald clock, now at 4 minutes. You are wasting your allotment, he said. Let the Council proceed. Then he gestured again, and the chamber flooded with images. Human wars from the 20th century, firestorms, trenches, bodies carried through rubble, riots on cracked streets. The clips were edited with surgical intent, no context, only chaos, only blood, only the oldest wounds. A counselor's voice chimed in from an upper tier, oily with presumed wisdom. They are a species forged in violence. Another added. They built nuclear arsenals before they built interstellar ethics. The chamber's murmurs rose, some disgusted, some fearful, some smugly relieved to have an excuse to look down. Rook flinched like someone had struck him. Nadim's eyes shimmered, not with tears yet, but with the pressure behind them. Juno's hands moved near his belt as if reaching for a weapon he wasn't allowed to carry here. Kale breathed once, deep and quiet. She watched the human footage the way a surgeon watched a scar. Yes, she said when the clips ended. We did terrible things. The room leaned forward, hungry for denial. Hungry for rage. Kale refused both. We fought ourselves, she continued. We learned. We wrote laws because we needed them. We built treaties because we were tired of funerals. And when we reached the stars, we did not arrive to conquer. We arrived to join. She paused, letting the words settle into the chamber's air. Then you came to Eidolon, she said, and taught us what your guidance means. Thule's smile returned, thin as wire. You make an emotional appeal. That is understandable. It changes nothing. Kale's voice stayed level. It changes everything. Because your clips show what we were, not what we are. If you want evidence of what we are now, look at the fact that our delegation walked into your chamber unarmed. Juno's jaw tightened at the reminder. Kale tilted her head slightly, a question wrapped in politeness. Do you know why we did that, High Executor? Thule didn't answer. Because we expected law, Kale said. Not theater. The Herald clock dipped under 3 minutes. Thule's hand lifted again. A new hologram formed, a council warrant, stamped and glowing, filled with legal script. The words that mattered were translated in sharp Terran letters. Unauthorized military intelligence. Disruption of council proceedings. Detention ordered. Security drones, previously drifting like decor, snapped into a new configuration. Their lenses fixed on Kale. A low hum vibrated through the floor. Rook stepped forward half a pace. This is outrageous. Ambassador, Kale said softly, not looking back. Do not. Rook froze, caught between fear and obedience. Thule spoke with the serenity of someone lighting a match in a library. General Kale, you have introduced hostile insinuations and refused to respect council procedure. You are hereby detained for investigation. Your delegation will be escorted from the chamber. The chamber reacted in layers, some surprised, some relieved, some pretending neutrality. Several smaller Endas lowered their gazes. They had seen this ending before. The council did not argue. It removed. Nadim whispered, voice trembling. They're taking you? Kale finally glanced back. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes carried a message that steadied the scientists shaking hands. They're giving us what we need, Kale murmured. Juno hissed, barely audible. Say the word and I. Kale's stare cut him off. No. Then she faced forward and stepped away from her delegation, moving toward the drones. She raised both hands to shoulder height, palms open. Compliance performed. Thule watched, satisfied again. Wise, he said. You will be treated fairly. Kale stopped a meter from the drones. Before you take me, she said, voice carrying cleanly, I request one thing. Thule's brow ridged. Denied. Kale didn't flinch. Let the record show, she said, that you issued this detention order before addressing the questions I asked about your fleet's identification and your intelligence source. The sealed case didn't open. It didn't need to. Dr. Syra Nadim felt the activation ridge click beneath her thumb, and a thin vibration ran through the composite shell like a held note. On its surface, a line of pale light appeared. No symbols, no warnings, just a steady pulse that said, transmitted. Across the chamber, High Executor Thule watched General Kale held in restraint fields and assumed the story was now his again. He was wrong. The Council's central hollow, a towering projection that normally obeyed only sanctioned commands, flickered once. A brief tremor in the air. Then the image shattered into a cascade of new windows, each stamped with a header in neutral archival formatting. Public record intake, verified source. Non-council key, legacy authorization. Distribution, external relays confirmed. The chamber's translation halos stuttered as their systems tried to classify what they were seeing. The hum of 1,000 languages faltered into one shared confusion. Thule's head snapped toward the Herald. Cut the feed. The Herald's veil turned slightly, as if listening to orders from above. This is not a council feed, the Herald said, voice suddenly uncertain. This is public archive layer. A senior counselor's crest lifted with alarm. That layer is obsolete. Nadim's voice carried from the human section, sharper than she expected it to be. Obsolete does not mean dead. Kale stood motionless within the restraint field, hands still raised. Her eyes never left Thule. She had given him exactly what he wanted, her arrest, and he had given her what she needed, his certainty. The first window expanded. A star map of the Eidolon system appeared, clean and calm. Then overlays, jump vectors, entry points, timestamps. The data scrolled, too fast for a lay mind, but the conclusion was simple enough that even a frightened chamber could swallow it. Council peacekeeping vessels had entered Eidolon under mass transponder profiles. Not unidentified. Disguised. Thule's voice rose, cutting. Forgery. Human fabrication. Another window unfolded beside it, displaying raw signal logs from independent relay buoys, Council-coded handshake signatures, matching frequencies, matching encryption cadence. A small delegation from a mercantile species began whispering urgently among themselves. They recognized encryption rhythms the way traders recognized counterfeit currency. Kale spoke at last, calm and precise. Those are Council handshakes, High Executor. Do you deny your own locks? Thule's jaw flexed. Peacekeeping forces may use operational concealment. Operational concealment, Kale repeated, tasting the phrase. For a lawful mission. The second window opened like a wound. Resource surveys. Geological scans of Eidolon's third planet. Lattice mineral concentrations, rare enough to warp supply markets, valuable enough to start wars quietly. The survey was stamped with Council data tags and a date, months before the so-called intelligence alert. A note appended beneath, clipped and bureaucratic. Secure region prior to competitor claims. Minimize public attention. Directive, Executor Office. The chamber's sound changed. Not an outcry yet, more like a room inhaling, suddenly aware that the air had been poisoned. Counselor Idril, ancient and heavy-voiced, leaned forward from a high tier. High Executor, Idril said, each word measured. Was this operation motivated by resource acquisition? Thule's eyes flashed. The Council's economic stability is intertwined with security. This is irrelevant. It is central, Idril replied, and the chamber rippled at the defiance. The third window appeared without mercy. Audio. A peacekeeper captain's voice, tinny through a cockpit recorder, speaking to someone off record. Directive Thule stands. No identification on approach. Make it look lawful. If they broadcast, cut the relays. If they resist, label it insurgency. The translator halos didn't need to translate the tone. The contempt was universal. Thule's face went still, too still. That is spliced. Nadim lifted her chin. Chain of custody metadata is embedded. You can verify it with your own tools, if you allow them to run. Thule flicked a glance toward the upper tiers, searching for support. Many eyes had turned away. The fourth window arrived like a final nail driven with care. Gate sabotage analysis. A diagram of the ancient relay gate that linked Eidolon's communications network back through human infrastructure. A schematic of the failure cascade that had hit Earth, grid collapse, hospital systems failing, emergency networks choking, the slow death count that didn't look like a battlefield but felt like one. Then the forensic signature, microfilament residues, tool marks, code fragments in the sabotage routine. Matched against Council Security Directorate kits. The match probability displayed in cold numerals, 99.97%. A sound escaped Rook, a sharp, wounded exhale. He had known, but seeing it arranged cleanly, like evidence on a steel tray, made it harder to pretend it was merely tragedy. Kale's voice softened, not in weakness, but in gravity. That gate cascade killed people who never saw Eidolon, she said. Children in dark apartments. Patients whose machines went silent. Cities that burned because water pumps stopped. Thule's restrained drones seemed to hesitate, as if even their programming disliked being part of this. Thule forced his voice into steadiness. Collateral effects of a necessary operation. Your species was developing. Stop, Idril said, and the chamber startled at the authority. We have heard your claim. We are now hearing facts. Thule turned on Idril. Counselor, you overstep. Idril's eyes, ancient and unamused, held him. You have always mistaken obedience for agreement. Kale let the last window hang. Let the room sit inside it. Let them feel the distance between compliance and what it really was. Then she shifted her gaze outward, to the tiers where minor species watched with the same fear humans once carried. She spoke to them, not as a general, but as a witness. You keep calling it compliance. she said, voice steady enough to cut through translation delays. You keep calling us a minor civilization. Her restraint field hummed quietly around her limbs. She didn't fight it. She didn't need to. Her eyes returned to Thule. You attacked our home? The sentence landed without ornament. No flourish. No threat. It filled the chamber the way gravity filled space, inescapable, simple, absolute. For a heartbeat, even the translation halos lagged, as if the concept had weight they had to adjust for. Then the words repeated in 100 languages, and each version sounded like a verdict. Thule tried to speak. Nothing came out clean. Kale continued before he could regain rhythm. You thought that if you wrapped it in law, it would become acceptable. You thought if you called it stability, it would be forgiven. Her eyes swept the chamber. In my world, when someone breaks into your house and hurts your family, we don't call it guidance. Thule recovered enough to snarl. You are manipulating the chamber. You are. A new feed cut in over him. Live telemetry. A council enforcement fleet, far from the station, hanging in open space like an insect pinned under glass. Their engine flares were gone. Weapon arrays sat silent. Their formation had drifted into messy, helpless spacing. No explosions. No debris. No flashing alarms beyond the calm red of systems that could not start. Thule's posture jolted. What is this? Kale's tone didn't change. A demonstration. The chamber didn't erupt. It split. Sound rose in pockets, sharp arguments in alien tongues, translation halos trying to keep up. Delegations that had stayed silent for generations suddenly leaned toward one another, calculating. Fear was still present, but it had changed direction. It no longer pointed only at humanity. High Executor Thule stepped forward as if he could push reality back into its cage through posture alone. This is an act of aggression, he declared, voice amplified. Terrans have interfered with Council peacekeeping assets. Under emergency authority, I invoke Article Crimson, designation, existential threat. Immediate containment is authorized. A few hardliner councilors signaled agreement at once. Their emblems flashed. Security drones along the upper tiers shifted, orienting toward the human section. Captain Juno Mirek moved half a step, muscles coiled. General, give me! Kale's eyes flicked toward him. Not a glare. A command delivered without noise. Juno stopped. Kale addressed Thule without raising her voice. You want to call it terrorism because you can't call it evidence. Thule's mouth tightened. Your fleet has reached into Council space. Our fleet, Kale replied, touched your engines and left your crews breathing. That difference matters. Counselor Idro rose. The motion was slow, but it commanded attention like a tectonic shift. Their species carried age in the way mountains carry time. High Executor, Idro said, you will not invoke emergency authority while the chamber is under unresolved evidentiary shock. Thule turned on Idro, incredulous. You would defend them? I would defend the concept of legitimacy, Idro answered. You have treated procedure as a weapon. Now it has turned in your hand. A younger counselor, sleek, bright-eyed, spoke from a mid-tier. If humans can disable fleets without bloodshed, then your so-called stability has been an illusion all along. A hardliner snapped back. Or proof that they are too dangerous to exist. Kale let them argue for a few breaths. People made mistakes when they spoke from panic. The council was full of people who had never been forced to choose between appearance and truth. She lifted her bound hands slightly. The restraint field shimmered in the light like transparent ice. Release me, she said, not to Thule, but to the chamber. If we are here for law, then let the accused stand unrestrained while evidence is examined. Thule barked. Denied. Idrol's gaze turned toward the Herald. This is a public archive event, Idrol said. By foundational statute, restraint requires chamber vote. The Herald hesitated, then spoke as if surprised by their own words. That is correct. The chamber murmured again, and the sound carried something dangerous to Thule, recognition that his authority had boundaries. Thule's eyes sharpened with calculation. Fine, he said. Vote. Symbols flashed. Light pulsed from dozens of tiers. The result appeared over the dais, narrow, but clear. Restraint lifted, approved. The fields around Kale's wrists dissolved. She lowered her hands and flexed her fingers once, as if returning from a long hold. She did not rub her skin. She did not show relief. She stepped forward into the open and made sure every camera saw her standing without a weapon. Rook exhaled like someone released from a drowning grip. You've got the floor, he whispered. Kale nodded once. Then we use it. She faced the chamber with the posture of a commander who had already won the most important battle. She had forced them to look. I'm not here to punish your species, Kale said. I'm here to prevent the next Eidolon. The next blackout. The next compliance operation that becomes a funeral with paperwork. Thule scoffed. You offer speeches while your ships hold council assets hostage. Kale didn't deny it. She reframed it. We demonstrated a capability, she said. Not to frighten you into surrender, into caution. Your fleets are alive. Your crews are fed. Their life support is untouched because we chose restraint. A few delegates shifted, unsettled by the implication. Power controlled. Kale continued. You have called us minor. You have called our dead collateral. You have said we have no standing. So I will speak in terms your council understands. She lifted one finger. First, an independent inquiry. Multi-species oversight. Public archive access. No internal council-only tribunal. Second finger. Second, reparations to Eidolon. Not symbolic credits. Real corridors. Medical aid. Reconstruction. Escorts that aren't peacekeepers. Third, formal recognition of Terran sovereignty. Not provisional. Not developing. You will not embed monitors in our chain of command. Fourth, a charter amendment. No compliance operations without multi-species vote and verifiable identification. No mass transponders. No private directives. She let her hand fall. Agree, she said, and we restore your disabled fleet within the hour. Refuse, and you will discover a truth that makes empires nervous. Thule leaned forward, voice edged with contempt. And what truth is that? Kale's gaze stayed level. That logistics wins wars long before cannons speak. You built your dominance on control of corridors. We learned your pattern. We can interrupt it without turning cities into ash. A hardliner counselor hissed. You threaten the council. Kale tilted her head. I am describing reality. Idrel's voice cut through. High Executor, answer the resource motive. Answer the directive. Answer the sabotage signature. Thule's eyes darted, seeking refuge in hierarchy. He found none. The chamber had begun to understand that he had dragged them into a scandal large enough to break their myth. He tried to pivot. The Terrans have admitted interference. This is enough to classify them hostile. Kale spoke over him, quiet but absolute. We interfered with your ability to harm. You interfered with our ability to live. For a moment, Thule's composure cracked. His voice sharpened. You primitive moralists, do you think the galaxy is maintained by kindness? Stability requires fear. It came out too clean. Too honest. And that was when someone above the dais made a sound, small, like a laugh that had forgotten how to be polite. A peacekeeper officer stepped forward from Thule's escort line. Their armor was similar, but their posture was different, stiffer, as if their spine had finally chosen a direction. Executor, the officer said, voice trembling under the translator halo. You told us the operation was lawful. Thule's head snapped. Silence. The officer swallowed. You said the transponders would be masked? You said the relay gate must be cut so Earth couldn't coordinate a response. You said if anyone questioned it, you'd blame the captain? The chamber went still again, but this silence was not confusion. It was the hush before a door slammed shut. Thule stared at the officer with a look that promised ruin. You are mistaken. The officer's hands shook. I have the directive file. It bears your signature. It is already in the public archive. Kale didn't move. She didn't need to. The council was now consuming its own. Idril turned toward the tiers. Chamber, Idril said. We have evidence of unauthorized concealment, profit motive, and collateral sabotage reaching a sovereign planet. We will vote on removal of the executor and immediate inquiry. Thule's voice rose, sharp with desperation. If you do this, you undermine the council itself. Kale stepped forward half a pace. No, she said. You did.